Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for today's video. Today we're going to wrap up talking about routine and specifically talking about boundaries with routine, setting boundaries and what that looks like. And I don't know if we have the answer, but we're going to try and figure it out and do some talking, so we appreciate you joining us. So we talked about why routine's important, and we talked about why routine is hard, and now we kind of want to, I guess, jump into why or how you have your routine while also interacting with other people in your life that maybe aren't a part of or willing to be a part of your routine, because none of us are on an island.
Well, and how to set the boundaries for your routine too.
Yeah.
Right? And I just have to preface this by saying I don't have the answer. As we were talking about this earlier, you asked me the question, Josh, I'm curious what you do because you're so routine. I'm like, I have no idea. So I certainly
That's the thing is, but you do set the boundaries. Maybe you haven't thought how you do it, but obviously you have because you successfully live a very routine life.
So this will be us, Josh, just sitting here and picking your brain.
Interrogating.
Interrogating. I like that better.
It's going to be terrible.
Well, one of the reasons that we're talking about this, though, is because lots of times people have the intention of having a routine and have all of these great plans and really have every idea about having a routine in their life. But then everybody just says, like, oh, life gets in the way, right? Well, what is that exactly? And how do we make that not happen all of the time? Because the truth is, if you have this idea that you're going to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night, and that's part of your routine, that's part of your structure for your day. But, one night a friend asks for some help, and the next night you want to hang out with somebody, and the next night, pretty soon you've gotten through the whole entire week, and you actually haven't done it once, right? So I guess I would just say, like, and maybe just, again, Josh, for your interrogation purposes, right? I want you to think about one of the things you do in your routine that happens almost always. Not always, because I don't think anything happens always, but almost always.
Okay.
What is it?
Start my workday at 8 a.m.
Okay.
Were you waiting for Sherry to, like, magic trick? Like,
Well, I
got it in my head. Now you tell me what it is.
Well, I didn't know if she wanted me to, like, divulge it or not.
How can we have to have you, like, talk out
Tell
loud
it?
if we're going to
Okay.
pick your brain, right? Okay, so every day you're at work by 8 a.m. I actually would say that this is clockwork also, because I don't think I've ever gotten here at 8 a.m. and you're not here before me. So
I've been here a couple times.
It's because my biggest pet peeve is getting here and my clients are already here. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So how do you manage to actually make it here 8 o'clock? Not 8 o'clock. You're here before 8 o'clock. You make it here before 8 o'clock for an 8 a.m. session 5 days a week. How do you do that?
Well, I would say that the biggest portion is making sure that I have an appointment at 8 a.m. because then there's this sense of obligation. Right? If I don't have somebody that's supposed to be here at 8, I might roll in at 8:15.
Okay.
Which is legit. Like sometimes I'll come in after.
If you have 9 o'clock, you show up at 8:15.
Yeah, if I have a 9 o'clock, like, so if I have an 8 a.m. appointment, I'm usually here somewhere between 7:45 and 7:50, right? So 15 minutes before. But if I have a 9 a.m. appointment, I'm here 30 to 45 minutes early because I don't just hang out at home.
Well, I think that's part of the routine, right? That speaks to the routine, because even if, for you, if there's not the obligation, maybe you're not here right at 8, but you're like, I go to work at around 8 o'clock every day.
Yeah, I may make a better breakfast than cereal or nothing. Sometimes I do that too,
Well, okay, so
8 a.m. start time.
8 a.m. start time.
Step 1 is making sure I have a reason to be here at 8.
Okay, so something that actually matters to you on the other side of that. There's an actual reason for that part of your routine. It's not just for fun.
Kicks and giggles, no.
Right, okay, so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Right? What kind of things do you think, for you and for other people, could get in the way of something like being at work 10 minutes early before your 8 a.m. appointment? What kinds of things could get in the way, or what kinds of things do?
I always curse if there's a train. I do. I cross a train track and it just drives me nuts. I have to censor myself a little bit here. So traffic could certainly be one thing that gets in the way.
When the weather's bad.
Weather.
I know for me that makes getting here
more stressful.
And significantly slower.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
What else?
Getting out of the house. So I do have getting out of the house is stressful. I hope my wife doesn't watch this. Because because
I'm going to send this one right to her.
I try to keep it in check. I have a little boy, right? And I had this, I don't know how to make this story short. I had this issue one day where I was on my way out the door. I needed to be here early. My little boy was awake, could see him on the camera. And I went blitzing past and I was like, I don't have time. And that line hit me. It was like, you don't have time for your kid? So I stopped, I went back, gave him a hug, a kiss, played with him for 2 minutes, and then left, right? But getting out of the house can be difficult because I'm trying to get here earlier than 8, but I don't want to give up my earlier routine in the morning. But then, like, my wife is waking up with my kid, and he needs a diaper change. I'm like, oh, I'll just do it. And then before I know it, I'm, like, the getting out of the house process is significantly longer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so I'm saying to you, okay, so that sounds super relatable, right? I think everybody runs into something like that. Here's the plan that I have for my routine, but then not everything around it.
And here's
really.
the 2-year-old.
Right, here's the 2-year-old,
Yeah.
here's the train, here's the whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
How do you still maintain the routine even with that going on?
Sometimes I skip breakfast
Okay.
because I value being here before 8 a.m. more than I value, I would love steak and eggs. That never happens. So maybe there's other areas of my routine that may get cut short depending on what happens.
Okay. Well, I think that what you're saying makes sense. It's almost like you have really specific priorities, right? Specific
Uh-huh.
priorities
Okay.
look like things that matter most to me. My family, making sure my family's okay. And also, like, being to work when I say I'm going to be there.
Work's probably too high on the priority list.
Right, but you know what? Like,
Sure.
those things definitely, is if we're going to talk about what's priority in your morning, how do you maintain structure? Well, so you might take a little extra time to make sure that things are okay at home before you, like, get up and go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean get up and go to work. I mean just get to work.
Sure.
Like, leave the house to go to work.
Uh-huh.
So maybe part of it is knowing, like, what your priorities are. And also, I would say, because I know you said, like, oh, you hope your wife doesn't watch this, but I actually would say, like, she can't, there's no way she could help the 2-year-old having all the things in the morning, because that's just how that works.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it is also like you have some trust that you're going to leave and she's going to hold down the fort.
Oh,
you know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have that trust in her, you wouldn't be able to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know, as we were talking about this before the episode, and I don't know if this is a good place to plug it, but one thing I think in setting boundaries effectively is you have to have a values list, or, you know, you call it a priorities list. When I had that thought, like, oh, I don't have time to say hi to my kid before work, it's like, well, then I'll just start the day at 9 a.m. from now on. I was like, well, I don't want to do that. But you have to have a values list, and so sometimes your routine adjusts to the value. But one of the things that you said, and maybe this is a good segue into that, is that sometimes the challenge with setting the boundary, regardless of what that value is on the list, the hard part is the feeling of guilt that comes because of it, right? So if you set a boundary with somebody, or you set a boundary for you is probably the better way you would say that, when you have to hold that boundary when someone else needs it to be different, we have a lot of guilt about that. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it does. Because I think what you're saying is that, I mean, part of this is you're leaving the house and you have this thought, like, I don't have time. Well, you know, of course, like, my kid is my priority, right? But your guilt could have kept you there in his room for 30 minutes.
Sure.
Well, it could have kept you there for eternity.
All day, yeah.
Right? But what you're saying is that, like, you don't necessarily allow the guilt to run your life either, right?
Mhm.
The guilt around, here's my structure, here's my routine that I have, and you don't allow guilt to dictate it.
Maybe I get rid of guilt too fast,
Well,
which
I
is
think-
not true. I'm a very guilty person.
I think it speaks to, like we talked about before, it's similar to the idea of your triggers or your anxieties, or, like, I think boundaries falls into that same category where that's your responsibility, right? No one, you can set a boundary, but no one's going to be like, I see Josh, I read his mind, I know exactly what he expects in his boundary, and I'm not going to interfere with that. Or even if you say it to the person, right, and you express that boundary, there's no guarantee that they will keep that. So it becomes your responsibility, where I think you demonstrate that with your story, right? You go in and you play with your son, but you're not waiting for your wife to be like, okay, Josh, you can go, right? It's, you say, well, I'm going to do this, but I also have these are my values. I got to get to work or whatever, and I will spend 2 minutes here playing because you're the one taking responsibility for your boundaries and for your routine and those kind of things, right? No one else can maintain it for you.
I actually really like that thought, because sometimes I think the biggest thing that gets in the way of us keeping our routine is that it doesn't fit into what other people want us to be doing. And at some point, we kind of do have to say, hey, look, me doing my routine might let you down or might make me feel guilty, and I still am going to do it. A lot of times people want the guilt to go away first, or everybody else around them to sort of fall in line with the routine first. And it just doesn't work that way. If you're going to have a routine and you're going to set up some of these boundaries around your routine, you're going to have to feel guilty while you do it, and you can still do it even while you feel guilty. It's a matter of saying to yourself, like, yeah, maybe guilt is going to be part of this, at least for a while, and it doesn't have to go away.
At some point, as the routine becomes more routine, I think the guilt piece goes away, because it sets up that space for you specifically, but also others to recognize this is just the way that it is, right? One of my biggest pet peeves is that the gym doesn't open earlier on Saturday, which isn't...
Yeah, I would hate to have to sleep in a little bit on Saturday.
Which,
what a disaster.
well, it's not so bad in the winter, but like when you get into spring and summer...
Wait, what time does the gym open on Saturday?
7.
That's too late for you.
Well, I mean, you think about it, like if it's the middle of August and you know that Saturday is mow the lawn day, do you want to mow the lawn at noon? No, it's flipping hot, right? So it'd be nice if the gym would open earlier so I can go get that out of the way and then be home in order to mow the lawn before it's 300 degrees. I'm obviously exaggerating. But as I've done that, like, my wife is very supportive of knowing, hey, Saturday is his day off. And so she could just say, oh, well, because Josh is home, like, I'm going to sleep in and he's going to take care of all the stuff in the morning with the little boy and blah, blah, blah. But she doesn't. She's like, oh, yeah, go to the gym, do your thing. And then when I get home from the gym, it's her chance to go do her thing, because now it's my responsibility to take our little boy and roughhouse, right? But that's because that's just how the routine has been for probably far too long, you know? So yeah, I think part of the guilt will go away because you create this space where this is the expectation, and then other people recognize that that's part of the routine too. And they actually are okay with it. It doesn't become too big of a problem.
Yeah, and I think realizing other people are okay with it helps alleviate that guilt over time. But I think of guilt as just like any other distress, right? It's and like building a routine is changing what you're doing, or maybe getting a little bit out of your comfort zone, or whatever it is you're trying to do. And anytime you do that, there's going to be some kind of distress, right? Whether it's anxiety or guilt or both or whatever. And so distress is not a bad thing, right?
Especially when people that you care about, when you start the routine and people that you care about may need something during that specific routine. Like, it always drives me nuts when people want to start things at 8 a.m. on Saturday. I'm right in the middle of the workout, right? But tomorrow, which happens to be Saturday, my wife wants to do something that's right in the middle of the workout, and so we'll just cut the workout short. I guess I could go to a different gym and get up early. But you can adjust the routine. It doesn't become as bad.
Right. And I would just say that if you're adjusting the routine more than you're actually doing it, then you don't have a routine.
That's a
right?
solid point. Yeah.
Like, yeah, there can be things, obviously, sometimes, like, life does happen. Sometimes there are things that make it so that you can't have a full workout on a Saturday morning or whatever. But kind of stepping back and evaluating, how often am I making an exception to the point that this is no longer even a routine for me?
Yeah. That sounds stressful to me.
When I think about it too, like I wonder, I don't know if this is maybe the right way to approach it, but I wonder if there's value in kind of viewing your routine as like segmented, or like these checkpoints, right? okay, you've got something tomorrow morning on a Saturday that's going to interrupt your gym routine. But that thing will end, right? And then maybe there's something that you usually do at noon, right? And there's, okay, I'm back on track, right? You stay home and play with your son for a little bit longer, but you're still about to work on time, and then you're back on track in the routine. So it's almost like having if you have your routine enough spread out throughout the day, you have opportunities to get back onto the timeline of your routine.
I actually really like thinking about it that way because, again, one of the biggest points of having a routine is to have that like safety and predictability in your life. And so if you actually had the experience multiple times of day of going, oh yeah, I am back on track, how much safety does that give you? Like, it gives you a huge sense of safety, a huge sense of predictability and control even, which I think a lot of us feel like maybe we're lacking in our lives.
Well, and how many times do you hear clients have like one bad thing happen in the morning and they're like, yeah, my day was just shot.
Crud, that's how I feel.
You say that, but like even if you had a hard morning, like let's say your son was sick all night and you missed the gym, you would still show up at 9 and your day would still go on as normal, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
Back on track,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But how many times do you have people that say that that's not the case?
Regularly.
And they probably don't have a routine to get back onto, is my guess.
Yeah, it's hard.
Right, because that turns into like just living in a crisis. Everything is a crisis. There are no checkpoints, right? And this is exactly what we're trying to do with a routine, is get back to that space where there are checkpoints all day long so that you feel like you've got your feet underneath you.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap this up, if you were to give one routine tidbit, advice, etc., what would you say?
Go slow.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say.
That's why I spoke up first. Go slow. Add one thing at a time.
You go first. I'm bad with routine. Yeah, the wrong person to be giving advice.
So first of all, I would echo you. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do. The second thing I would say, you said it today as we were filming or pre-filming. I like the concept that you switched the idea. The setting up a routine or a boundary, it's about you, not about others. And I think if you can make that shift that you're setting up this routine for your benefit, I think it can make it easier to install a routine.
I think just kind of our last little conversation, I think not catastrophizing, right? Not letting something that interrupts your routine ruin the rest of your day or routine or whatever that looks like. And recognizing, yeah, this morning may have sucked, but the rest of my day does not have to be affected by this totally independent event.
Hooray for routines.
Well, thanks everybody for watching today. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you and chat down there. So we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
See ya.